Samantha Chian, your host with Spirit of Nevada. This episode is brought to you by the Richard Harris Law Firm, helping families and injured victims throughout Nevada for over 40 years. Hope you enjoy the show. Some say seeing is believing, while others have faith in things they cannot see.
The fact is that he was never actually caught. He just kept killing people and then fading into the mountains down around El Dorado Canyon. And so, they knew who was doing it, but they could never catch him.
"22 murders, all pointed to one man, Queho."
When you turn off to go over to Tacoma, in an area that he never got to, but he's actually buried up there.
So, was there a reason why a lawyer purchased his bones?
Roland Wiley. When the bones were found, they were found in a cave up on the side of the mountains along the Colorado River, just south of the dam. And he had been dead about 6 months. His last known charged killing was in January of 1919, when he killed one of two women that were living in El Dorado Canyon at the time. So, it just, the bones just were out there for a long time before he was finally buried.
For 35 years, Queho remained unburied until District Attorney Roland Wiley purchased the bones for unknown reasons. He finally laid him to rest in 1975 in Cathedral Canyon. Who was this man? And why did he commit these murders? On this Spirit of Nevada episode, we reveal the dark secrets of the infamous Native American outlaw named Queho. As I look off into the distance, my mind starts to imagine what life was like back then. Queho's story, it begins here at Nelson's Landing in the late 1800s.
I collected stuff from him for years before I even bought this place. Got packets of this stuff. Got pictures of him on the wall and all that thing.
So what do you have in this folder to show me?
Well, this is just some of the junk that I have. So these are mostly old newspaper clippings from the past. These are the different names of him when they first starting out with this one and this one and this one until he got his right names. But see, the first clippings are from 1910, and they're just numbers of different clippings over the years that I collected, all the way to when they found his body in 1940.
Who found his body?
There are two prospectors out here, and they found him about 2 miles below Willow Beach on the Nevada side, up in a cave about a half mile up from the water. And so, but it just shows all of the different stories ever written about him. Some of them good and some of them bad, and it just tells about all the different people that he had killed over the years and stuff like that.
Do we know a lot about the people that he was accused of killing?
Well, yeah. If you get into there, my mind's kind of vague now, but the first people he kills is the watchman that's down by the river for the Goldbug Mill, and then he kills a woodcutter, Woodworth, up in the McCullough Range, and from there it's about every few months they find somebody else that's killed. They know that Queho is doing a lot of these killings because as a young boy, he had broke his leg, compound fractured his leg, and the miners set his leg the best they could, but it never healed right. So one foot kind of toed out a little bit. So the footprints walking away from the scene of the crime put it on him. That's how they could actually point their finger at who was doing the killings right off the bat, and that's why he got accused of so many.
Because he had such a tough life even to begin with, like when his mom died right away when he was born, and then his dad, they called him a half-breed, but they didn't really know who his dad was. And not to mention his foot. Do you think that because of all those things, he was kind of already lost in his own mind as he was doing these, committing these murders?
One of the men in the posse had a hard time believing that he was doing the killings at first. And he's in the posse that chased him right after he killed Ma Douglas. And he was pretty well convinced that he had done quite a few of those murders. Maybe not all of them, but quite a few of them were pretty obvious.
So based on all these articles and all your research you've done, what is the most fascinating thing about him?
That he basically eluded posses that were chasing him for years. And the reward went up to $3,000 for him.
That's a lot at the time.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Because he was getting paid $2 when he worked at the mine, correct?
Yeah, he only made a couple bucks a day. And I have a payroll when he's on the payroll here at the mine, when he's just a kid in 1890. He's probably a young teenager at that time.
Our journey, it continues as we leave Nelson's Landing and head to Boulder City. Have you ever wondered who they are? The ones that have dedicated their lives to preserving history. The ones that risk it all to be remembered. In 1996, the local chapter of the Queho Posse was formed to remember those men who were in search of Queho. During my research, I had read that a Boulder City judge by the name of Nelson issued a court order preventing the sale of Queho's bones until a positive identification was made. So I went straight to the courthouse, hoping that somebody could shed some light into this subject. So the reason for my visit is I just finished my interview over Nelson's Landing. Do you know the story behind Queho?
Well, I know that he was down at Nelson, or by Nelson, and he was a renegade who would come in and would steal mostly from the shacks down there, from the miner shacks, and I understand he killed at least one miner down there in the shack when he was stealing things. I believe he might have been injured, or they think he may have been injured, and later they found his bones a few years later in a cave upriver from Nelson, where apparently it looked like that's where he stayed and lived and would make his raids from there.
It's just so interesting how there's so many conflicting articles on not only the Indians, but where they went and what tribe they were associated with. And so it's just, that's why we're doing this episode, is just to find out really who they were, where they came from, and why they did the things they did. He had a rough upbringing already. And then there was conflicting stories about whether he did commit certain murders or if he was just the person that everyone blamed. They could never get to him.
With his disability, still could get away. It's because I think he knew the lay of the land.
He did,
Yeah.
and he adapted.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, the whole story.
Yeah.
The next day, we drove to the Clark County Museum for our final interview with the famous historian Mark Hall-Patton.
In 1905, Las Vegas gets created. 1909, Clark County gets created. You still have mining going on in El Dorado Canyon. That's part of Clark County. And in 1910, you have an Indian, half Cocopah, Spanish, half white, half Paiute, we don't know what. But he wasn't tribally affiliated. He wasn't part of any tribe. His mother had not been allowed into whichever tribal group she was related to. That we don't know.
Because his mother passed right after she gave birth.
No.
No. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Because
well,
a lot of the articles say
I know,
otherwise.
but you got to be really careful, because the little bit that we know is when he was growing up with his mother, he didn't grow up in any tribal group, so he's not being raised by wolves. So somebody's raising him.
Yeah.
He killed in 1910, 1911, and 1919 that we know of, and probably a few other times in that time period. But he wasn't found until 1940, February or so of 1940.
How do you think that he died?
Oh, probably got bit by a snake, either that or, tainted food. Those are the two most likely things. You get bit by something or you get some kind of bad food. When they found him, he had stuff he had stolen from the dam site in his cave. So he had been active, he had been going, and the dam, had been, the construction of the dam had been going until 35. So he had been active there. He wasn't shot, because there was no sign of that. Nobody had been after him. The last posse had gone out in 1935. They would send a posse after him when there was a sighting that somebody would report. It's one of these things where, yes, he was out there. Did he kill these people? Yeah, probably, some of them. But then he stopped. And why he stopped, he didn't tell anybody.
Thank you for sharing this story with me, because through my research and interviewing people, I hear all sorts of things, and then I start to believe that, wow, this is what, I thought in my head, okay, his mom passed away, when he gave birth, right? And so my idea in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so he doesn't have his dad, he doesn't have his mom, he's living all by himself. kids probably made fun of him because of his foot, right? He had a club foot, and so I'm thinking, oh my goodness, no wonder, he was probably already lost in his head when he committed these murders. And then I sit down with you and you say, oh yeah, his mom didn't die at birth, his mom was raising him. He wasn't associated with anybody in particular, but it wasn't like he was by himself, like I led to believe this whole time during this investigation. So it's very interesting to hear how this all evolved and how the story just tends to twist as time goes on.
Oh yeah,
So
and this one really badly.
Yeah, perfect. The last time Queho was spotted was here in downtown Las Vegas. It looks a lot different than it did back in the 1930s. It was reported that he was buying a can of beans when a policeman spotted him. And by the time he went back, he was nowhere to be found. So during my research, looking at Queho's life, I found several different articles about where he went and what he did. So here, Queho, an Indian outcast. This was on History Net. I'm going to click on here. It talks about a judge in Boulder City. We're going to scroll through here pretty quickly. Most of this stuff is we've already covered in the video. Ma Douglas, who's one of the people that he was accused of killing. This is when the reward went out for his body, $3,000 for somebody to bring him back, but obviously they couldn't catch him. So we're going to fast forward here. So here's the good stuff. All right, Frank Waite paid up and then turned the body over to the Las Vegas Elks Lodge. In their El Dorado village, the Elks, they had his memorabilia enclosed in glass, and this was put on display. Over the next few years, the mummy became a great attraction at the annual El Dorado celebration. Queho even rode in the back of a convertible in one parade. So this is just one article to show that he was at the Elks Lodge. We originally thought Queho's bones were at the Elks Lodge in Boulder City, but it turns out he was showcased at the Las Vegas location. A few blocks down the street lies the downtown Palm Mortuary, which is where his bones were stored until they were sold to the Las Vegas Elks Lodge. As our adventure comes to an end, we head to Cathedral Canyon to see Queho's final resting place. I never thought my life would lead me here, chasing after history and looking for the truth. Queho lived a very interesting life. You can't always believe what you read. Sometimes you have to go out there and look for the truth yourself. Find out next week as we uncover the stories of other notorious Native Americans who roam Nevada. I'm Samantha Cheon, but you can call me Sam with Spirit of Nevada. Brought to you by the Richard Harris Law Firm. I wear my sunglasses inside.
And at night.
And at nighttime. There's Bobby. Hi! Barbie over here, like David, does anything to get the perfect shot.